by Ali Riaz. He's a distinguished professor of politics and government at Illinois State University. Professor, thank you very much for joining us. So the veteran leader said that his priority would be to restore law and order and prepare for new elections. It's a huge task. I mean, what measures do you expect him to take in order to achieve these goals? And how optimistic are you that he can deliver?
I'm optimistic that he and his cabinet will be able to deliver some of the promises that the students have made, and over the last couple of weeks, the popular mandate they have earned through the mass movement. Of course, the law and order situation is a challenge, but it is getting a little bit better. What happened is this, that since the former Prime Minister fled, basically the civil administration collapsed because the law and order to be maintained by police was so politicized and was so abused against the demonstrators that people couldn't have any confidence on them. So that created an opportunity for those who wanted to take the advantage of the situation. But also because of those who were part of the last regime, they found this vacuum as an opportunity and a chance to show that their regime was better and try to destabilize the situation. But since Professor Yunus returned and people have joined him, and in many cases, students are working together with the people to resist this kind of things, and it has improved a little bit.
Professor Riaz, I don't want to downplay, the enormity of his task, but I'm wondering whether he can take solace, Yunus, that is, from the fact that the country's civil service, in a bit of a disarray, but still largely intact. Critical infrastructure seems to be okay, and the key garment sector is already trying to make up for lost exports. So can he find solace in that, for starters?
Of course, it is. I mean, to start with, that's the issue. Other than the law and order situation, as I mentioned, the challenges with respect to the civil administration, it has remained intact. Yes, of course, what happened over the last 15 years, that many of those who are part of the civil administration were party loyalists and used their power to persecute people. So they are now kind of afraid. But at the same time, there is demand and expectation that this administration would be cleaned up in the sense of those who are responsible. Those who are responsible, not everyone, those who are responsible would be facing justice through the process. So other than that, the infrastructure remains fine. There's no issue there. Due to this general strikes and the violence and all of the curfews that were imposed, some of the industries, including ready-made garments, is a little bit behind, but they would be able to catch up because of the situation. Everyone is so euphoric. Everyone wants to participate. This is a new beginning for Bangladeshis.
Professor, I want to get your reaction to the new cabinet. It includes students who led the anti-government protests, a former foreign secretary, attorney general, environmental lawyer, human rights activist, but no one of Hasina's party. I mean, will they be able to lead the country out of this crisis, at least until the elections?
Definitely, they would be. I mean, I say definitely because this cabinet represents a broad spectrum. You mentioned about Hasina's party, and there's no other political parties represented there either. I mean, besides Hasina's party, if you are looking at, they are the ones who committed such kind of heinous crimes. 500 plus people were killed between July 15th and August 5th. So understandably, many of these leaders are actually have committed some of the crimes. But more importantly, it is not about the political parties. This cabinet is about representing the aspiration of this popular uprising, which is in large measure represented by the students, very young, for the first time in Bangladesh that we have seen, but I'm optimistic that they would do a good job. But also, as you mentioned, environmental lawyer and these and that, and the former, attorney general and human rights activist is there. All these things is trying to represent a broad spectrum of civil society, which will lead this process towards democratization.
Professor Riaz, the Prime Minister of India, sent his best wishes to Mr. Yunus, but also urged the interim government to protect Hindus and all other minorities. We know that Sheikh Hasina clamped down on hardline Islamist parties when she was in power. So I'm wondering about this trepidation that has been reported among Bangladesh's minority populations, particularly the Hindus. Will Mr. Yunus be able to douse this desire for retribution that some appear to be harboring?
It is not a retribution issue. As a matter of fact, there have been incidents which had targeted minorities. That has happened during the Hasina regime as well. But the way it has been projected by the Indian media and others that this is something to do with Islamists, I think that is erroneous. That is kind of folly. It has nothing to do with the Islamists per se. This is an exaggerated projection. What is important is that, yes, there have been incidents, those are not acceptable one, and the government is trying to, as I said, absence of police and all sorts of things has created this situation. So, and considering that people have come forward in many places, the religious minorities' place of worship have been protected by the people. So there is a small group of people, of course, they want to take advantage of the situation, creates havoc. Is unacceptable, but to portray it as if there is an Islamist upsurge and all sorts of things, that seems to me inaccurate.
Understood. Appreciate the context. Professor Riaz, we do have to go, unfortunately. We thank you for your time and for your thoughts. Ali Riaz is Distinguished Professor of Politics and Government at Illinois State University.